So, with the polls still pointing to a hung parliament, electoral reform has become the elephant in the room. And in a break from tradition, though, there are also some Liberal Democrats in the room pointing at the elephant and saying, look, there's a bloody grey elephant.
Here to give us a deeper look at electoral reform is a veteran of the Vote Now show, a man who's been with us since the very beginning, 2 weeks ago. It's Andy Zaltzman. Hello, Andy. So, what have you been thinking about this week?
Well, electoral reform, Hugh. I just can't think of anything else at the moment. My wife asked me what I wanted for dinner last night. I replied, a truly representative democracy that reflects the will of the people, with a splash of ketchup and a side order of single transferable potatoes. And to drink, I'll have a glass that's 35% full of wine, 30% full of mango juice, 25% full of chocolate milkshake, and 10% full of assorted dregs from the sink. It's what best represents all the drinks I slightly feel like.
So what's brought this on?
Well, polling day is now bearing into view like an uninvited killer wasp at a disappointing picnic. And it seems that a hung parliament is now increasingly inevitable.
If inevitability can in fact increase, which one?
Yes, but in the current climate, that now seems almost unavoidable. But even more intriguing, though, is the prospect that Labour could get fewer votes than either of the other two main parties, but still win, which would be bad news for democracy lovers, good news for fans of obvious miscarriages of justice, and great news for aficionados of awkward looks on the faces of people who have just undeservedly won something. Gordon Brown could end up standing outside Downing Street on the 7th of May, making a hasty phone call to cancel the removal men he'd booked in 2 years ago, with a forced grin similar to a boxer in a world title fight who'd just been pounded repeatedly in the face for 11 rounds before, with just seconds to go, a pterodactyl swooped into the ring, snapped up his opponent and flew out of the arena, squawking like a UKIP supporter on a radio phone-in. Still, a win's a win.
Now, this can't be going down too well with voters.
Well, it's not. There's, in fact, been a surge, of course, in support for the brand-new Liberal Democratic Party, who, if some of the press are to be believed, were formed just minutes before the first televised leaders' debate. And they are, of course, the big losers under the first-past-the-post system, because in most places they are second-past-the-post. In 1983, in fact, both Labour and the SDP Liberal Alliance registered 26% of the vote. Labour shuffled off with 148 seats, and the Liberals were left clutching just 13, mumbling something about mathematics, witchcraft, and how Jesus might have been able to turn water into wine, but even he'd have struggled to turn that many votes into that few seats. And Nick Clegg, incredible to think, just 2 weeks ago he was still working on a building site. He described the current system as potty. Potty, presumably in the sense that it is obviously full of crap.
And what are the other parties saying about it?
The Tories have played the "don't let there be a hung parliament, we'll probably all die" card with surprising gusto. Oh, forget everything else, they've implored voters. We know you haven't responded to what we've said we'll do. You clearly don't want a Tory government. But surely, Britain, surely it is better to have a government that does what you don't want it to do than to have no government not doing anything at all. Vote Conservative! What an inspiring call to arms.
So is there any reason for keeping first past the post?
If we do keep it, I think we should have some consistency across our public institutions. In the interests of fairness and consistency, a jury in a criminal court should be able to convict a defendant on a 3-9 minority verdict. You just need a quarter of the jury to say guilty, as long as 4 of the other 9 couldn't be asked to turn up to court. And the remaining 5 thought the accused was definitely innocent, but for a range of different reasons.
And are there any alternatives?
There are. Firstly, absolute monarchy. Well, it's what made Britain great in the first place. You know, would Henry VIII have been such a top-grade king if he'd had to go through a House of Commons subcommittee before chopping his spouse's heads off? So let's put the Queen back in charge, but she will have to establish her authority.
How?
By chopping Prince Philip's head off. For the good of the nation.
Any other choices?
Well, there's proportional representation, which has its pluses and minuses. Pluses, everyone's vote counts. Minuses, everyone's vote counts. There's a radical new proposal that's just come out as well. That's proportional power timeshare, where you split up the 5-year electoral term according to the number of votes received. So if your party gets 20% of the votes, you have total control of Parliament for 1 year. And it means that fringe parties would only need 25,000 votes to win a day as the government. And treat themselves to a 24-hour frenzy of madcap lawmaking. We could keep first past the post, but tweak it and rearrange the constituencies by social subgroup rather than geographical location. So there would be an MP, for example, for the crucial constituency of men with moustaches, one for pregnant women who enjoy bingo, one for people who think the environment doesn't exist, and perhaps most importantly all, an MP for amateur golfers who like jazz but fear immigration. It would surely be more representative of what we actually think as a nation.
Thank you, Andy. One half of the Bugle podcast, Zaltzman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.